With the release of Marvel Rivals, we got more of the lore, and my favorite part so far is definitely Moon Knight. And my last video did pretty good, so I thought I'd share some more lore with you. And so far, my favorite lore is the war on vampires that Moon Knight is doing. Moon Knight's my favorite character in this game so far. I thought it'd be Venom, but it's Moon Knight. So I thought today we would take a look at the war that Moon Knight is waging against vampires, not only because Dracula owes him money, but because, there's a bunch of vampires. Now, before we get into Moon Knight's story, we have to go over Doctor Strange's first, because Doctor Strange is actually kind of like the precursor to Moon Knight's story, and then we'll go over one more story that shows what happened after Moon Knight's story. So first up is Doctor Strange. It was another sweltering summer night on the island of Manhattan. Though the sun had gone down hours earlier, the residual heat it left behind still radiated from the pavement in shimmering waves. The forecast had not called for any relief from the record temperatures in the immediate future, but the residents of Greenwich Village had come to expect the unexpected thanks to one of their more colorful neighbors. So when a powerful blast of icy air swept down the Bleecker Street, it barely drew any attention, at least from those outside. Within the confines of the building marked 177A, however, someone had most certainly taken notice of the sudden chill. "We have a visitor," said Dr. Stephen Strange, barely looking up from the ancient tome in front of him. The Sorcerer Supreme was sitting cross-legged, floating a few feet in the air as he studied the arcane rituals within this sacred text. He paused for a moment before speaking again, this time with a slightly more commanding tone. "Wong, do get the door, please. We mustn't keep our guests waiting." "Wong's out in a supply run," a gruff voice replied from below. "Guess we ran out of Eye of Newt or something. How come you never told me you were expecting company, Doc?" "Because we weren't," Strange replied as he looked down at Bats, the ghostly Basset hound that had recently become one of their most faithful companions. Strange unfolded his legs and gently landed on the floor of his study. "But invited or not, this is one visitor that it would be best to not turn away without at least hearing what he has to say. After all, he has traveled quite far to get here. Haven't you, Victor?" "Indeed I have, Stephen," replied the unexpected guest in an authoritative voice. There in the hallway, just outside of Dr. Strange's inner sanctum, stood the metal-clad monarch of Latveria, the villainous Victor Von Doom. "How the heck did he get in here?" Bat said with a low growl, the green glow from his spectral form intensifying. "This place is supposed to be intruder-proof." "It seems that the good doctor's sanctum sanctorum is desperately in need of some more powerful protection spells," Doom replied snidely, "and perhaps a better watchdog as well." "I suppose I could use to change a few mystic locks," Strange said with a smirk. "Though I scarcely have to worry about anyone getting past the front door. After all, there aren't many mortals as adept at sorcery as you." "You flatter me, Stephen," Doom replied. "Do go on." "It's true," Strange continued. "I may be this dimension's sorcerer supreme, but when it comes to the mastery of the dark arts, you may very well be my equal, which makes the fact that you've come here even more concerning. If you need my help, then something must be very wrong." "Everything is wrong," Stephen, Doom said, "and it has been for far too long, but I believe I have discovered a way to fix it, to bend time itself to my whims." "Time is not something to be tampered with," Strange replied. "The cost is far too high. You know that." "But what if the reward were even greater?" Doom continued. "I'm on the verge of something magnificent, Stephen, and you hold the key to my success." "What's this chrome-plated crackpot yapping about?" Bats asked, clearly growing more impatient with every second. "Victor has long sought to undo some critical mistakes that led him down his current path," Strange said. "Doom does not make mistakes," the visitor replied sternly. "However, there were certain steps along my journey that, if retread, could lead to possibilities that currently lie beyond my grasp. Tell me, Stephen, have you not ever wished to rewind the clock?" Strange paused, looking down at his mangled hands, wondering how his life might have unfolded had he not been in the accident that had forced him to go from renowned surgeon to reclusive sorcerer. But as the Ancient One had taught him, fate was not in the hands of any mortal, even those with unparalleled mystical might. "I have become who I am supposed to be, Victor," Strange said. "My journey would have ended in the same place no matter the road taken." "I wish to prove otherwise," Doom replied, "and to do so all I require is a single spell." "The fact that you do not already have access to the spell you seek speaks volumes," Strange said, raising a curious eyebrow. "There are few arcane rites unknown to a sorcerer of your esteem. Perhaps just the forbidden spells inscribed on the pages of the Darkhold," Doom said. Stephen Strange shuddered at the name. The Darkhold was a cursed collection of insidious incantations, said to be authored by the elder god of chaos known as Chthon. This so-called Book of Sins had a corrupting effect on those who dared to tap into its mystic malevolence. Strange had recovered the illicit text from the Dark Dimension long ago after a battle against his rival, Baron Mordo, and had stored it within the Sanctum Sanctorum for safekeeping ever since. "I'm afraid that volume is off limits, old friend," Strange said resolutely. "Which of these chthonic curses could possibly aid you in your endeavors anyways?" "The vampiric verses," Doom whispered, almost as if speaking the spell's name aloud was enough to unleash its terror upon the world. "Hold on," Bats interrupted. "You want to turn yourself into a vampire? Ain't you already spooky enough, fella?" "I wish no such thing," Doom said, his patience beginning to crumble away. but Dracula and his immortal legion used the same right centuries ago to successfully cheat time. Perhaps with a proper amount of scrutiny, I can do the same and unlock the secret of time's true nature. Ah, interesting approach, Strange said, but one far too risky for me to allow. I'm sorry, Victor, but the answer is no. I was afraid you would say that, old friend, Doom responded, but I will have what I seek, even if I must take it from you by force. Without a moment's notice, Doom conjured up the veil of Khonshu, sending a massive wave of darkness cascading towards Strange. Claws of Bast! Strange commanded, slashing through the oncoming wall of ebony energy with brightly glowing purple claws that were forged from the spirit energy drawn directly from Wakandan ancestral plane Dijala. Impressive, Stephen, Doom replied, circling his arms in a frenzied motion, but can you weather the mists of Fimbulwinter? Freezing gusts of wind rushed from the magical circle Doom had conjured, but Stephen Strange was not willing to back down, even as the bitter frost stiffened his cape. I've spent winters in Kamar Taj, Strange mused. This is nothing. Doom watched in surprise as Dr. Strange fought through the icy gust to cast his next incantation. Even more shockingly, each of the Sorcerer Supreme's hands seemed to be conjuring their own spells, entirely independent of each other. One blazed a bright red while the others glistened gold. As Strange brought his hands together, he released an enchantment that even he had never summoned before, born from the combined energy of both the Crimson Cosmos and Asgard. Crimson Thorns of Yoggsdrizzle. I can't pronounce that word, so we're going to go with that. Long spiked vines erupted forth from Strange's hand, glowing a deep scarlet as they whipped towards their intended target. Before Doom could even think to utter a defensive spell, he found himself completely ensnared by the thorny limbs, unable to move. You seem to have forgotten that I am far more powerful when I'm within my own home, Strange said. For a guy who doesn't make mistakes, Doom, Bats added, that was a pretty big one. Perhaps I was too rash in my actions, Doom responded. Release me from these shackles, Stephen, and I assure you I will depart your home in peace. You ain't really gonna trust this guy, are you, Doc? Bats asked with a deep concern. I am, Strange replied, lowering his hands and releasing the spell's grip on Doom. Victor and I may have different goals and opinions when it comes to sorcery, but he has always been a man of his word. Indeed, Doom said as he began to walk from Strange's inner sanctum. And you also have my word, Stephen, that I will find a way to finally break the bonds of time. With your help, or without. And you have my word, Strange warned, that should you overstep your station, the Sorcerer Supreme will do whatever it takes to stop you. Now get out of here before we find out just how bite-proof that tacky armor of yours really is, Bats yelled. No one speaks to Doom like that, you mutt, Doom snarled back. You should consider yourself lucky that you are already deceased. Guess there's a first time for everything, Bats responded wryly. Before I go, Stephen, Doom said, looking back over his shoulder at Strange, a warning. I have foreseen great evil coming to this city you call home. You may be safe within your house of truth for now, but those outside its wall will soon be drowning in darkness. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Bat sparked towards the darkened doorway as Doom faded into the shadows. Easy, boy. He's already gone, Strange replied, but I have an uneasy feeling that we'll find out what Victor was talking about soon enough. So if you'll excuse me. With a simple gesture of one hand, Dr. Strange opened a sparkling portal to a hidden corner of the astral plane, one so remote that even he barely knew where it was located. With a wave of his other hand, the Darkhold flew off his bookshelf and into the rift. The extra-dimensional gateway quickly closed as soon as the ancient tome passed safely through, as if it's neither the portal nor the book had ever existed in the first place. For safekeeping, Strange said, almost as if reassuring himself. Doom will never find the Darkhold there. I just hope he's not the only one looking for it, said Bats, turning his attention back to the far less dangerous spellbook that he'd been studying when his unexpected guest first arrived. As Bats curled up on the floor of Dr. Strange's study, the chill finally faded from Bleecker Street. Soon enough, the sun would rise again and its heat would saturate the city. If only the residents of Manhattan had known how a few days of light and warmth they had left. A few months later, Stephen Strange sat in front of the large circular window on the upper level of his sanctum sanctorum, sipping on a cup of herbal tea. It had been some time since Victor Von Doom had paid him a visit, but the confrontation, while brief, had not left his thoughts. He often found himself wondering if Doom would succeed in his quest to conquer time itself, and this day, Strange would finally have his answer. Even before the blinding flash of lights filled the sky, Strange could feel the massive disturbance rippling across the fabric of time and space itself. He didn't know where it originated, but he had a single educated guess. Latveria. What have you done, Victor? Strange wondered aloud as a disturbance spiraled wildly across the material plane. It pierced through dimensions, including the astral plane, and surged towards the sanctum sanctorum. Strange had only a fraction of a second to react to the oncoming wave of coronal chaos, but he knew that his next move could very well determine not only his fate, but the fate of countless universes as well. Both as a surgeon and a sorcerer, Dr. Stephen Strange had faced countless life and death choices before, but never one as quite important as this. That would be Dr. Strange locking himself away in the mirror dimension, so he's trapped there, and every time you play him in a game, he's actually astral projecting outside of the mirror dimension. Now we get to Moon Knight, and then we have one more after that, but first, before we get into Moon Knight, if you like this video, definitely subscribe for more, and I appreciate you guys watching this video, so you should definitely subscribe. You also should join my Discord, which is going to be linked down below or up here. I also stream every day on YouTube and on Twitch. Twitch is also going to be linked down below, my YouTube as well here, so you should definitely subscribe. But if you're in my Discord, you also get updates on all my videos and my live streams, so you should definitely subscribe and join my Discord. Now on to Moon Knight. Come to me, my Moon Knight. The ancient voice boomed in the back of Mark Spector's brain, momentarily throwing him off his game. It wasn't as if hearing someone else's words in his head was something new. He'd been sharing the same space with multiple personalities for years now. But this wasn't Jake Loxley or Stephen Grant calling for his attention. It wasn't even the enigmatic Mr. Knight. This was the boss. I'm a bit busy, Spector replied out loud as he thrust his white boot into the face of yet another garishly garbed supervillain. Trying to keep the Zodiac from ransacking one of your temples. You sent me here, remember? So you'll need to call me back another now, the voice commanded. A sudden burst of pain coursed through Spector's skull. He closed his eyes for a moment to try and clear his head, and when he opened them again, he was no longer at the heart of an epic battle between good and evil. In fact, he was nowhere. Okay, so nowhere might be a bit dramatic, but it was the best that Spector would come up with to describe the blank white space between planes of reality that he had unexpectedly been transported to. A deafening silence hung in the void. For once, even the other voices in Mark Spector's head had nothing to say. For a moment, he felt as though he was the only being that existed. But he knew better. If he had been summoned here, he was well aware who had done the summoning. I have chosen you for a new battle, my avatar, the ancient voice said, finally breaking the quiet. Mark Spector turned to see an enormous figure towering over him. Draped in white Egyptian robes, where his head should have been, instead there sat the skull of a long-beaked bird. Its empty sockets peered into Mark Spector's soul, judging him, always judging him. Hey, Khonshu, Spector replied casually to his patron, the Egyptian god of the moon. Fancy seeing you here. The divine space is where I dwell, Khonshu replied, not seeing any humor in Spector's words. It is from here that I watch the realms beyond and find those who have earned my vengeance. Yeah, Spector chimed in, and from here that you sit pretty while I do your dirty work in the real world. This has been our arrangement since your untimely demise years ago, Khonshu reminded Spector. A gruesome fate you were spared by my intervention alone. Do you wish to alter our agreement? No, Spector replied, but I would like to finish one mission before you toss me into the next one. Maybe that's just the mercenary in me. I have always appreciated your dedication to a task, Khonshu said, but more pressing matters have arisen that require your special attention. Something about Khonshu seemed different. He was more confident, more powerful, less scattered than usual. It was almost like all the fragmented personas that the moon god had presented over the years were suddenly fused into one. Spector didn't know what had caused the change, but he thought it must be nice. Fine, Spector replied, beginning to grow impatient. Just tell me whose head I need to bust open already. Spector's unfinished encounter with the Zodiac had pushed his level of aggression to the boiling point. He didn't want to just stand there and talk anymore. He wanted to get back in the fight, any fight. What do you know of vampires? Khonshu asked curiously. That they suck? Spector responded with a chuckle. And that Dracula owes me money. As you know, Khonshu said, once again ignoring Spector's attempt to infuse some levity into the situation, I have long served as the protector for travelers in the night. Vicariously through me and the other fists of Khonshu before me, Spector mumbled under his breath. But sure, go on. Ever since they first crawled into the darkness ages ago, vampires have imperiled my people and my purpose, Khonshu continued, and now I have had a vision that warns of the threat becoming far more permanent. I thought vampires were immortal, Spector said quizzically. Not many threats more permanent than that. Immortal, yes, Khonshu said, but bound by their curse to the cycle of day and night. They cannot walk in the sun, so their atrocities are limited to the hours under my watch, when the moon hangs high in the sky. So what's the problem? Spector asked. Is daylight saving time about to end or something? No, another voice answered. Daylight itself is about to end. Spector turned to see that someone else had unexpectedly entered the divine space, an imposing figure in iron armor wrapped by a dark green cloak. Spector instantly recognized the king of Latveria, Victor von Doom. This is sacred territory, Khonshu yelled. You shall not foul it with your presence. Banish him, my Moon Knight. Yeah, Spector said, reluctantly rushing towards Dr. Doom. I'm on it. As he ran in his enemy's direction, Spector reached into a pouch in his belt and grabbed a handful of crescent-shaped darts. He hurled them in Doom's direction, but the metal-clad monarch raised his gauntlet and deflected the projectiles as if they were no more than cheap toys. I did not come here for a battle, Khonshu, Doom said, beginning to move his hand in a strange series of gestures. But if you must turn your champion against me as a matter of honor, so be it. As Doom finished his series of hand motions, his armored fist began to glow with mystical flames. Soon, two curved burning blades materialized in his grip. The daggers of Dormammu should end this night before he even begins, Doom said with a smirk that you could almost feel behind his faceplate. Good luck with that, Spectre said, taking advantage of Doom's moment of bravado to land a solid fist right to the side of his opponent's masked face. Furious, Doom lunged at Spectre, swinging his flaming daggers at the white-clad warrior. Spectre dodged his thrust easily at first, but it wasn't long before his reaction started to slow. He barely had time to recover from his battle against the Zodiac, and 12-on-1 battle tends to take a toll on even the mightiest of heroes. Doom could see his opponent beginning to falter. He started to attack even more relentlessly, eventually gaining the upper hand. A kick to his chest sent Moon Knight stumbling back. Raising the enchanted blades above his head, Doom thrust him down at Spectre, narrowly missing his target's body. Instead, the blades pierced through Moon Knight's cape, pinning him to the floor. One Spectre didn't even realize existed in the emptiness of the divine space. "Enough!" Khonshu said. "You have won the right to speak." And when Doom speaks, the victorious villain responded, casually gesturing for the mystical daggers to vanish. "All had best listen, for he only speaks once." Moon Knight pulled himself back to his feet, standing between Doom and Khonshu, just in case Doom had any other tricks up his iron sleeve. "Few recall the real origins of vampires," Doom said. "But you and I know the truth, Khonshu. Their race was born from an ancient curse inscribed in the pages of Darkhold, written in blood of Varney, the first of their kind. It was these vampiric verses that granted them immortal life, and if my calculations are correct, which they always are, that same spell may hold the key to unlocking the very nature of time itself. I wish to study it further." "You know not what you tamper with, foolish mortal," Khonshu warned. "I would know full well," Doom said, "had the Sorcerer Supreme not denied me access to the Darkhold. I have good reason to believe he has stashed it away on another plane of reality for safekeeping." "Seems like Strange made the right choice," Spectre said. "The last thing we need is you accidentally unleashing more vamps on the world." "Not the world," Doom said. "All I want is a small portion of it, and that's where you come in. If Khonshu were to simply hold his beloved moon in the sky and shred a single city in eternal night, it would allow me all the time I need to unlock the secrets of the vampires, even without access to the vampiric verses themselves." "You're crazy," Spectre said. "That city would instantly become a nesting ground for the creatures of the night." "Such an act would endanger countless innocents," Khonshu added. "Please," Doom laughed. "Since when do the gods care about the lives of a few million measly mortals? Together, we could use the vampires however we wish, then dispose of them completely when we— "I will not allow this discussion to continue any further," Khonshu said sternly, raising a bony hand to silence Doom. "There is far more at stake here than you could ever hope to know. A coming darkness lurking among the gods, a shadow even I may not be able to defeat." "And by I, he means me," Spectre mumbled. "My avatar may have lacked the skills required to remove you from this plane," Khonshu said, "but I have no such limits." "You fool!" Doom cried out as he began to fade from the divine space. "You're making a terrible mistake. Doom will have what he wishes, one way or another." As Doom's voice disappeared, a haunting silence returned to the empty whiteness surrounding Mark Spectre. Khonshu was still there, but for once it seemed like the god of the moon had nothing to say. "So what now?" Spectre finally asked. "I must locate the Darkhold at once," Khonshu replied. "The book with a spell that makes vampires?" Spectre asked, confused. "Isn't it better stowed away wherever Strange hid it?" "Just as the vampiric verses created our true enemies," Khonshu said, "there is another spell within the Book of Sins, the Montesi formula, that could take their gift away permanently." "So while you're cruising the astral plane looking for a lost library book," Spectre pondered, "what on earth am I going to be doing?" "Protecting the night and delivering my vengeance," Khonshu replied, "as you always have." "And when Doom lives up to his promise and finds a way to unleash the blood-sucking horde?" Spectre asked. "Then you must be ready," Khonshu said, "and so must I." "I'm no vampire slayer," Spectre responded. "Isn't that Blade's gig? Why not call him?" "Because the Daywalker is not my fist of vengeance," Khonshu replied defiantly, clearly angered that his own servant would dare question him. "Also, he is currently unavailable," Khonshu added quietly. "All right then," Spectre said, grinning behind his featureless mask. "But those Fangers are about to find out that they aren't the only ones who want blood." "I expected no less. Now go, my Moon Knight," Khonshu said, his voice once again booming in Mark Spectre's head, "and serve me." Spectre blinked for a split second, opening his eyes to discover that he was no longer in the divine space. Now he was standing on a New York City rooftop. The silence was replaced by a symphony of sounds, including a scream emanating from a nearby alleyway. He was glad to be home. As Moon Knight left out the edge of the building and swung across the night sky on a grappling cable, his bright white cape billowed out behind him, luminous in the light of the full moon. It must have been a glorious sight to behold, he thought, but if Khonshu and Doom were right about what was to come, Mark Spectre knew his costume wouldn't stay white much longer. "You know what the worst part about vampires is, Friday?" Tony Stark asked, as he launched a barrage of short-range missiles from the cannon mounted on the shoulder of his Iron Man armor. "The fact that they've taken over Manhattan thanks to an ancient curse has thrust the entire city into a state of eternal night?" The armor's AI replied matter-of-factly. "Well, yeah, that," Stark responded, rolling his eyes as Friday stated the obvious yet again. but they're also a pain in my shiny metal butt when it comes to taking them down. As if to prove Tony's point, the cluster of missiles hit the ground at a nearby construction site, completely missing their intended target, a small group of vampires that have been prowling the streets of Hell's Kitchen. Most of my targeting systems are thermal, Stark continued, and since vampires aren't technically alive, they don't generate much in the way of body heat. Do you have any idea how many missiles I've wasted since they showed up? My most recent count is 1,963, Friday said, or approximately $98 million worth of— I get it, Stark sighed. I have to find a better way. A few minor modifications to your weapons array would improve your accuracy by 374.2%, Friday went on. I can project the revised schematics for you to review as you wish. It'll have to wait, Stark said. For now, I'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. Iron Man swooped in front of the group of vampires and unleashed a few strong repulsor blasts from the palm of his gauntlets, each of them missing his bloodthirsty foe by mere inches. I'm not sure that switching to manual targeting is yielding any better results, sir, Friday said concerned. Maybe I'm not trying to hit them this time, Friday, Stark said, smiling as he continued to unleash his blasts to the sides of the vampires. At least not yet. The creatures of the night huddled closer and closer together to avoid the onslaught of energy bursts. The horde turned to flee, but they had been herded into a corner. Iron Man had them exactly where he wanted them. Unibeam Armor Overdrive, Stark commanded. Instantly, the reactor in the center of his chest began to glow with an intense power. A concentrated beam emanated from the arc reactor, washing over the vampires. When the light faded, the horde lay defeated at Tony's iron boots. Wow, Stark said. I really needed that. Well, I'm glad you got it out of your system, Tony, another voice interrupted over the armor's calmly. Because now I need you back in the lab. Ugh, you're such a buzzkill, Reed. Stark responded, clearly annoyed, but he knew that his fellow scientist, Reed Richards, the brilliant hero and explorer known as Mr. Fantastic, was right. Ever since Dr. Doom had unraveled the boundaries between time streams, causing them to overlap and entangle with each other, countless dimensions have been destroyed and the worlds that did survive have been thrown into complete chaos. Tony and Reed have put their big brains together to design a machine that might be able to reintegrate the timelines and restore the remaining realities to the way they have been before. But even with the help of a think tank of super geniuses, including T'Challa and Shuri from the interstellar Wakandan Empire, their efforts hadn't produced any tangible results. That's because a time stream reintegration device required massive amounts of chronal power, the kind of raw time energy that could only be generated by a newly discovered element called chronovium. And until they secured enough chronovium to ensure TRD's success, Tony wasn't about to risk doing any more damage to the fabric of time and space, or to the device itself. Reed, on the other hand, didn't seem nearly as concerned. Ben just got back from his latest recon mission, Reed said over the comlink, and he recovered something that might be of great value to us. A lifetime supply of garlic, Tony half-joked. No, Reed answered dryly, a chronovium crystal, one of the purest I've ever seen. Then put it on a necklace and give it to Sue for your anniversary, Stark said sternly, because unless it's generating enough chronal energy to operate the time stream reintegration device at full capacity, we're not using it. Stop being so stubborn, Tony, Reed replied. We both know that the real science requires experimentation. We can't trust a TRD to fix all the universe's problems if we haven't properly tested it first. The way I see it, we've got one shot at this, Stark argued. We've checked the numbers. The design is flawless. The device is our golden ticket to fixing the time stream. I'm not looking to change course here, but if we rush it and wreck it, we could lose our only shot. I've had my share of luck in Vegas, but this one gamble, I'm not ready to take. Are you? Reed paused just long enough that Tony thought he might have lost the signal, but then he finally replied. I suppose not, Reed said, his voice tinged with disappointment, but we can't stay in a holding pattern forever. The time will come when we have to pull the trigger, ready or not. Take it from a guy who used to make weapons for a living, Stark said. Even when you think you're ready to pull the trigger, you never really are. Funny, another voice responded, this one nearby. I've never had that problem before. Tony had been so caught up in his conversation with Reed that he failed to notice the arrival of another hero on the scene, the white-clad warrior known as Moon Knight. You're a little late to the party, Spectre, Stark said confidently. I already cleared out all the unwanted guests. That's not what Khonshu told me, Moon Knight replied. He says the vamps have been using the site as a secondary nesting ground. You're crazy, Stark laughed. If there were more of them here, my armor totally would have— Tony stopped, realizing his mistake. He hadn't heard of the vampires into the construction site. They had heard of him here. They must have somehow figured out that the armor's thermal sensors wouldn't alert him to the presence of more of their bloodthirsty kin lurking silently in the rafters above, waiting to strike. Who's crazy now? Moon Knight asked as dozens of vampires suddenly descended upon the two heroes. Still you, Stark responded, blasting energy beams at the oncoming attackers, but I guess you're not the only one now. The whole world has lost its damn mind, said Moon Knight as he planted his staff into the ground and vaulted forward, kicking back a particularly vicious vamp. For the first time ever, Khonshu might be the only one making any sense. You mean that moon god you're always talking to? Stark asked suspiciously. What's he got to say this time? He says that you've been focusing on the wrong problem, Moon Knight replied. You're so busy trying to save the universe that you're forgetting about saving the people in it. So we should stop the vampires first, then fix the time stream, Stark said, furiously firing every weapon in his arsenal at the endless wave of vampires. Easy to say, but we've been trying to come up with new ways to combat the city's current crisis, and as you can see, nothing's working. Science isn't going to solve this, Moon Knight said, pulling a small ankh from his belt. An ancient curse calls for an ancient solution. As Moon Knight raised the ankh over his head, it began to glow. The blinding rays of moonlight shining from the totem sent the remaining vampires running for cover. You wouldn't happen to have another one of those things, Stark asked. Like a really, really big one, maybe? No, Moon Knight responded, but I have something better. A plan. I'm listening, Stark said eagerly. There's a forbidden spell called the Montesi Formula, Moon Knight continued. Khonshu says it has the power to wipe out the vampires for good. What's the catch? Stark asked. The spell was written in the Darkhold, Moon Knight replied. All the pages of the Darkhold got scattered across the city when that other Wanda pulled Doctor Strange back into our dimension, Stark finished. Lovely. Khonshu says he knows where we can find the page we need, Moon Knight said. But there's one more thing, and a hero like you isn't going to want to hear it. Try me, Stark said. When I say the spell can wipe vampires out for good, I mean it, Moon Knight said. That includes all the innocent New Yorkers that have fallen prey to Dracula's legion and joined their ranks. That's a lot of potential casualties, Stark said solemnly. You used to deal in war, Tony, Moon Knight said. You know better than most that casualties are part of the equation. I'm sorry, Stark responded. The price is just too high. Never dreamed of the day where I'd hear Tony Stark say those words, Moon Knight said. Neither did I, Stark replied, uncertain, and I'm not sure how long I can keep convincing myself that they're true. Khonshu's chosen avatar leapt into the air and quickly bounded from one steel girder to the next, his white cape flowing behind him as he landed atop the building next to the construction site. He looked down at Stark and delivered a final offer. It's time to let magic clean up its own mess, Stark, Moon Knight said. Are you with me or not? Tony paused, considering the options, but before he could answer, alarms began to blare inside of his helmet. No more time to talk, boss, Friday chimed in. I just picked up a massive power spike over in Central Park, and from my readings, it seems to be an Asgardian in nature. Did Thor finally show his pretty blonde head? Stark asked hopefully. That's a big negative, Friday replied, but whatever it is, it's giving off some intense mystical energy. Great. More magic, Stark said sarcastically as he powered up his boot chest and lifted into the air. Just what I needed. As he reached the level where Moon Knight was perched, Iron Man paused for a moment. Well, are you coming with me or not? He asked. That depends, Moon Knight replied. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of whoever can end this nightmare, Stark said, and so far, that hasn't been us. Maybe it's time to change course after all. So that's all for Moon Knight's War on Vampires. Obviously, we'll probably have more as the seasons develop and as the story gets released. But there are a few more stories. For example, Null is pretty heavily present in this game, like I mentioned in my last video. So if you want me to talk about Venom and the Guardians of the Galaxy's lore, where they're actually stuck on Glinter right now, let me know in the comments below. You know, if you're maybe a little bit shy, just leave a like, and I'll look at the likes and be like, hey, you guys like this a lot? I'll make another video. But I hope you did enjoy this video. Like I said, join my Discord. Definitely subscribe for more. And you definitely come out to my streams. And you know what? That's all my Discord. So the Discord is the Happy Slapper Hub, okay? You can also join my Alliance, which is Slapper Corp. So I'll put it up on screen right here. If you want to join an Alliance, we're going to sign up for some tournaments. You get some cool achievements and rewards like chrono tokens. And I think you might be able to get some cosmetics. But whatever, we're going to join some tournaments and you'll benefit from joining my Alliance. So I appreciate you guys watching the end. Let me know in the comments below who you're manning in Marvel Rivals right now. Appreciate you guys. Peace out.